joining me tonight. I almost forgot that I need to be soft speaking for this video. It's really good to see you. I hope you're doing well. And if not, that's fine. Let's change that, shall we? Tonight I am going to read you one or two bedtime stories. Bedtime stories. I love bedtime stories. And I hope that you enjoy this. Here we have our book for tonight. I love this dust jacket. It looks pretty cool. Kawaii. This is the complete first edition, the original folk and fairy tales of the Brothers Grimm. These are really weird stories. If you didn't know, a lot of the classic Disney movies and fairy tales are based off of Brothers Grimm. Most of them are based off of either Brothers Grimm stories or Hans Christian Andersen stories. And I've read this entire book. I read it slowly, just for fun, one story a night. And it's fascinating. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend picking up a Brothers Grimm fairy tale book and reading it. But if you don't want to, you can always just listen to me too. Tonight I am going to read my favorite story. If you've watched this channel, you might take a guess at what it is, although the title likely won't give it away, but I think you'll be able to discern what it is as we read through it. So let's start with that one, shall we? It was a cool dust jacket, but it was causing the book to slip in my hands. This is cool too. Okay, here we go. Let's see, page 225. There are cool illustrations too, every now and again. Alright. This is the 68th fairy tale in this book, and it is called The Summer and the Winter Garden. A merchant wanted to go to a fair and asked his 3 daughters what he should bring back for them. The eldest said, "A beautiful dress." The second, "A pair of pretty shoes." And the third, "A rose." But it was difficult to find a rose because it was midwinter. However, Since the youngest was the most beautiful daughter, and was so extremely fond of flowers, the father replied that he would see whether he could find a rose, and would make every effort to do so. When the merchant was returning home after the fair, he carried a splendid dress for the eldest and a pair of beautiful shoes for the second daughter, but he hadn't been able to obtain a rose for the youngest daughter. Each time he had entered a garden and had asked for roses, the people had made fun of him and asked him whether he really believed that roses grew in the snow. He was very sorry about that, and as he was pondering whether there might be something that he could bring home for his favorite child, he reached a castle, and there was a garden on one side in which was half summer and half winter. On one side the most beautiful small and large flowers were blooming, and on the other side everything was bare and deep snow lay on the ground. The man got off his horse, and since he noticed an entire hedge full of roses on the summer side, he was glad and went over there. Then he plucked a rose, got on his horse, and began riding away. He had ridden only a short distance when he heard something running behind him and panting. So he turned around and saw a large black beast that shouted, "Return my rose to me, or I'll kill you. Return my rose to me, or I'll kill you." The man replied, "Please let me keep the rose. I'm supposed to bring it to my daughter. She is the most beautiful maiden in the world." "If you like," said the beast, "but in exchange I want you to give me your beautiful daughter as my wife." In order to get rid of the beast, the man said yes, and thought he wouldn't come and demand his daughter, but the beast yelled after him, "I'm coming to fetch my bride in 1 week." Now the merchant brought each one of his daughters what she had wished. All of them were delighted, and the youngest daughter was the most pleased by the rose. After a week had passed, the 3 sisters were sitting at the dinner table, when all of a sudden someone with heavy footsteps came up the stairs and knocked on the door. Open up," he yelled. So they opened the door, but they were truly horrified when a large black beast entered. "Since my bride didn't come and the time is up, I've come to fetch her myself." Upon saying that, he went up to the youngest daughter and grabbed her. She began to scream, but that didn't help at all. She had to go off with him, and when her father came home, he found that his dearest child had been kidnapped. Meanwhile, the beast carried the beautiful maiden into his castle, which was quite wonderful and beautiful. There were musicians who had begun playing, and below was the garden that was half summer and half winter. And the beast did everything to make her feel comfortable, and one could read from her eyes how pleased she was. They ate together, and she had to ladle out the food for him, otherwise he wouldn't eat. The beast thought she was precious, and eventually she became very fond of the beast. One day she said to him, "I've become very anxious, and I don't know why, but I feel as though my father were ill, or perhaps that one of my sisters is sick. Couldn't I see them just one time?" So the beast led her to a mirror and said, "Look into the mirror." And when she looked into the mirror, it was as if she were at home. She saw her room and her father, who was really sick from heartbreak. Indeed, he felt guilty that a wild beast had kidnapped his daughter and had probably been devoured by him. If he had known how well she was, he wouldn't have been so depressed. She also saw her 2 sisters at the father's bedside. They were all weeping. All this troubled her heart, and she asked the beast whether he might let her return home for several days. "Go to your father, but promise me that you'll return within a week." She promised him, and as she was leaving, he called after her, "Don't stay any longer than 1 week." When she returned home, her father rejoiced that he was able to see her one more time, but the illness and the sorrow had eaten away at his heart too much. Consequently, he couldn't regain his health and died after a couple days. So his daughter couldn't think of anything else due to her grief, and before her father was buried, she went to his corpse and wept with her sisters, and they consoled each other. Finally, when she thought about her dear beast once again, more than a week had gone by. All of a sudden she became really anxious, and she felt as if he were also sick, and she immediately set out and went directly to his castle. When she arrived there once again, the castle was completely silent and sad. The musicians weren't playing, and everything was draped in black. The garden was now completely winter and covered by snow, and when she went to look for the beast, he was gone. She searched all over the place but couldn't find him. Now she was doubly distressed and didn't know how to console herself. Sadly, she went into the garden and saw a heap of cabbage heads. The ones at the top were already old and rotten. She spread them around, and when she had turned over a few, she saw her dear beast, who had been lying under them, and he was dead. Quickly she fetched some water and continually poured water on him. All of a sudden he jumped up and was suddenly changed into a handsome prince. A wedding was held, and the musicians immediately began playing. The summer side of the garden became splendid again. The black drapes were torn down, and they lived there happily ever after. Can you guess which story that is? I think the beast probably gave it away. But yeah, isn't that cool? That's the an English translation of the original story that would become Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. I love the idea of I like the name, the summer and the winter garden, and I love the idea of a garden where half of it is summer or spring, and half is winter. I think that's pretty cool. Another tidbit that is really interesting after reading all these stories, there are so many stories with a man who has 3 daughters, and the third daughter, or the youngest daughter, is always the favorite. It's kind of harsh the way they talk about it, but the youngest daughter is always the favorite and always the most beautiful. It's kind of silly, but old stories is interesting. Alright, I'm gonna look for one more short story to read to you tonight. What's a short one? Another short one. Let's see. Alright, let's try this one. page 233. It's a cool illustration there. All right. This is story 71, and it is called Princess Mouse Skin. Interesting name. A king had 3 daughters. What did I tell you? And he wanted to know which one he loved the most. So he summoned them to him and began asking. The oldest daughter said she loved him more than the whole kingdom. The second said she loved him more than all the jewels and pearls in the world. But the third said she loved him more than salt. The king was furious that she compared her love to him to such a meager thing. Consequently, he handed her over to a servant and ordered him to take her into the forest and kill her. When they reached the forest, the princess begged the servant to spare her life. Since he was devoted to her, he wouldn't have killed her anyway. Indeed, he said he would go with her and do her bidding. But the princess demanded nothing except a garment made out of mouse skin. When he fetched it for her, she wrapped herself in the skin and went straight to a neighboring kingdom. Once there, she pretended to be a man and asked the king to employ her. The king consented, and she was to be his personal servant. In the evening, whenever she pulled off his boots, he always tossed them at her head. One time he asked her where she came from. From the country where one doesn't toss boots at people's heads. Her remark made the king suspicious. Sorry. These stories are very silly. Finally, the other servants brought him a ring that Mouse Skin had lost. It was so precious that they thought she had stolen it. The king called Mouse Skin to him and asked how she had obtained the ring. Mouse Skin could no longer conceal her true identity. She unwrapped the mouse skin, and her golden hair streamed down. As she stepped out of the skin, he could see that she was beautiful, indeed so beautiful that he immediately took off his crown, put it on her head, and declared her to be his wife. When the wedding was celebrated, Mouse Skin's father was also invited to attend. He believed that his daughter had died a long time ago and didn't recognize her. However, at the dinner table, all the dishes put before him were unsalted. And he became irritated and said, "I'd rather die than eat such food." No sooner had he uttered those words than the queen said to him, "Well, now you say you can't live without salt, but when I said I loved you more than salt, you wanted to have me killed." All at once he recognized his daughter, kissed her and begged for her forgiveness. Now that he had found her again, she was more dear to him than his kingdom and all the jewels in the world. The end. That was a shorter one. Yeah, as I said, there is definitely a pattern with kings or just fathers having 3 daughters and then different situations play out, but it's often the youngest daughter that is the main character in that story. Out of the 3 daughters, it's interesting. Funny stuff. Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me read you a couple Brothers these grim stories tonight. I hope you enjoyed them. I can't help but laugh at some of these stories. They're very funny and silly, mostly because they're a lot harsher than the Disney stories that we know. A lot of death, a lot of threatening people. It's pretty funny that Disney stories, stemmed from these fairy tales that were a lot more brutal sometimes and gritty. I don't know. It's funny though. Really, really fun stories. I highly recommend reading them. And honestly, I'll probably read some more in the future because it's just fun. I enjoy these stories. So, I hope that you enjoyed this. I enjoyed reading to you, and I hope that you are relaxed and sleepy. And I will see you